passionate to beat somebody. We're passionate to beat everybody.
My expectation is we go out and dominate and create a nightmare and make people never want to play you again.
If you are a fan of another team and your coach is not out there doing everything that Kirby Smart is doing right now, you are already losing. You feel however you want to feel about that.
Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide for 4 quarters. They got to see us in our house for 4 quarters. They got to look us in the eye for 4. This is about us and our family and our house. This is about us. This is our mentality. We ain't backing down. We ain't running. Set a tone, send a message. This is our house. Physical toughness wins in football now. And if you in this room, you got it. If you come in here, you better believe in it. Because this physical toughness, it's what makes the difference. Elite focus. That's all I do to the guy across from me. I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack. You take that helmet and you strike them. And you strike them and you strike them. That's how you get respect. Physically, I will break them.
Oh, yes, friends, here we are back for day 2 SEC Media Days, blowing out the coverage here on the channel. Tonight, we have some friends in the building. We also have some new friends that we haven't met before, but one thing you can count on for sure is that we're going to cover it top to bottom, all 4 teams, and we're going to have plenty on our dogs. But before we really get too far into it, I have to do a little roundup here, a little housekeeping, because the news never stops, even at SEC Media Days. And I talked about this yesterday because you go from a trickle, a brook, a babbling brook to a fire hose of information that is headed your way once SEC Media Days kicks off. So much so that the things I'm going to tell you right now kind of get lost in the wash. So first, let's take a second to recognize that defensive lineman Jordan Hall for Georgia has been recognized and nominated as a 2025 All-State AFCA Good Works team member. So we will see. They have to go through the process. You know, they have to make it through the season. There's the things that he's been doing to be on the list will continue, and we'll just see how he measures up against players from across the country. But one thing's for sure, that is something that's worth mentioning because good works in the community are always worth mentioning, and that's something we like to put a spotlight on here on the channel. Another thing that we talked about last night that turned out to actually not be the case at all. We learned early this morning, Kirby Smart wanted to clarify something that got out yesterday about Will Muschamp, about how he was not going to be on staff for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2025. Turns out that was nothing but a clerical error on the part of the athletic department information service. So Will is going to be with the team, much like the capacity he was last year. So that means Monday through Friday, he'll be there helping game plan, breaking down film, being an analyst. And then on the weekends, he's going to go watch his son play. It matters because the brain trust that is Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart in the same room, in the same defensive film room, is something that is not really matched across the country. So it is a big deal that Will Muschamp is actually going to be on the staff this year as an analyst. I'm happy to get that news, but it's funny that it was just a clerical error in the middle. He got left off the list of the team for this year. Happens to the best of them. And that is an example that it can happen to anybody. Now, the thing I started the show with, day 2 at SEC Media Days, and it's just like yesterday. We know there's going to be news, but we don't know exactly what it's going to be, and we never know exactly where it's going to come from. It could be the Dogs that are making news, and they did in a couple of different areas, or it could be Texas or Auburn, or we just don't know. And today's lineup was those 4 teams. They had originally scheduled Auburn to go first. For some reason, Georgia went first, so I don't know what happened there, but Georgia goes first. Then it was Auburn, Tennessee, and Texas all took the podium today. And that means, of course, that tonight we're going to discuss each of those 4 teams. And I'm so happy tonight because, as you can see, we've got some really heavy hitters on the show with us. Kyle Loomis from the E2C Network, who takes a look at Auburn, shares everything about the Auburn family. He's going to be in here with us in just a second to talk about their day at the podium. Our good friend Jed May from UGAsports.com is going to come on and talk to us about the Dogs, as well as Tennessee. And then we're going to put a bow on everything tonight with Zach Berry from A to Z Sports, who's going to help us out with the Texas Longhorns. That's kind of enough from me, but I did want to just get us started the way the schedule originally said it was going to be. and that is with the Auburn Tigers. Now, when I look at Auburn, there are a few things that kind of jump right to the front. I mean, clearly, Georgia-Auburn is a big deal. So let's get that out of the way. But I don't know everything about Auburn, but I know that last year they seemed to be doing pretty good on the recruiting trail. Right now, maybe not so much. And there's been a lot of talk about that. And golf. I'll let our guest talk about that if he chooses to. But they have a new quarterback. They have talent at wide receiver. They know how to do it at Auburn. The question is, will they? We're going to find out, because this is a big year for Hugh Freeze, honestly. If I sit back and think about where is his signature win, it's hard for me to find it. And it seems like Hugh is putting all of his eggs in one basket. That's this season. Because repeatedly today, he talked about just how much he loves this team. Nationally, I don't know that Auburn is being recognized that way. But internally, at least from the head coach's mouth, he says he loves this team. They're talented enough to get it done. They just have to go do it. And he is choosing to go with their new quarterback, Jackson Arnold, who comes in from Oklahoma. If you look at what happened on the field last year, you're like, how is that going to work? Well, Hugh Freeze tried to tell us today that Jackson Arnold is everything that he wanted a quarterback to be coming out of high school. He still sees that. Now, is he going to get it done for Auburn? I don't know, but Kyle Loomis probably does. Kyle, welcome in. It's good to have you back, buddy. It's been a minute. Always happy to have you here on the show. How are you?
Doing very well. I didn't know we were going to be talking about golf on a football show here. Is that what we're doing now?
Oh, it's not what I want to do. I'm just telling you. Honestly, that's a story that had flown under the radar for me up until like, I don't know, maybe 4 days ago, like leading up to SEC Media Days. And even then, I didn't really care. But then I was like, oh, it's tied to recruiting. That's why they're upset about it, is people are drawing conclusions. But Hugh doesn't seem to think that's the problem. And personally, whatever you need to do to relax, I'm fine with it. But I'm just curious, what do you know? Do you care?
I don't care, to be honest with you. Just to be flat out with it, I think this is a bunch of nothing. This is what happens during talking season is someone needs to find something they can to generate clicks and interest when we're all pretty fed up with talking about predictions and things like that. That's why I hold my true predictions until about 2 weeks out from the season, because I feel like you can get a better understanding of that. Now, what is true? We can, from the research that was done for an article, I don't know who to credit that to. I've seen the article. I just cannot come up with the name of it off the top of my head. That it appears he plays a lot of golf. Congratulations to Hugh Freeze that he can do that and have a lot of opportunities to relax. And it's a very trying thing, trying to build Auburn back up from what it once was and some decisions that they made about 5+ years ago that brought us to the point that we're at this. I just, to me, what's the point? I mean, because we cherry picked a time and place in a marathon. Our recruiting director, Kenyatta Watson, said it best. And I just, so simple, but it's so brilliant the way he phrased this on social media when he was asked this the other day about what's going on with recruiting. He said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we've got people freaking out about a sprint when it's actually a marathon. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you today that Auburn football is going to have another top recruiting class like they've had the last 2 seasons? People forget that with Hugh Freeze. I'm not going to sit there and say that at this moment, but I also know that people play a little bit too much into the stars and the rankings and things like that. I'm not saying that there's not some validity to that. Some people hear that incorrectly when I push back on that narrative a little bit. But to me, just to kind of nutshell all this together, this golf story is just a bunch of nothing that opposing fans have, rightly so. There is nothing wrong with opposing fans taking something like this and run with it. I love it. I think I do the same. We do the same thing to Georgia, with not to make light of serious situations, but there's this string of speeding and traffic violations with Georgia. We have fun with that. So it's just the thing that you do when you're an opposing fan. For the Auburn fan, everybody just take a breath. We're fine.
Well, okay, so let's drill down just a little bit, nuts and bolts it for me, because I've heard that the AD is sticking by his guy. He loves some Hugh Freeze. And he's I don't know if he's out on a limb or if he is pretty confident in what he's doing. But the scuttlebutt I'm hearing is that Auburn is all in on this idea that wait until August 1st, because that's when they seem to think that all of these new NIL deals are going to lock into place. That's going to happen. That's not up for conjecture,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
they're going to lock into place. And then they seem to think there's going to be people who can't come through on all the promises, and some of these players are going to become available again, as if a verbal commitment is binding. And then Auburn's going to make their move. So they're like, just hang on, it's coming. Do you buy that as a fan?
Yeah, I think that August 1st date is being played up a little bit too much too, that somehow on August 1st that everything's just going to be magically back into place. I don't think of it that way either. It's kind of the same thing that we ran through when Auburn just switched to Nike, and everybody thought, oh, July 1st, everything's going to be wonderful Nike. And then they didn't realize they were going to have to wait several weeks actually to get their gear.
Right.
And there are very good reasons, not to get into that subject tonight. It's not necessarily pertinent to what we're talking about, but there were very good reasons why it was done that way if you take the time to find out. So to be honest with you, I just don't worry about it all that much, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. They feel like they have the information right, the way they need to go about doing this thing, and it's going to put Auburn in the best position possible. Here's what I do know. Coach Hugh Freeze sold himself as a great recruiter, and to this point, he has proven that to be true. And I don't just say that in terms of stars and rankings. I talk about getting people onto the field and actually getting them to a point where they can compete for playing time, win starting jobs over people who have been there, and then become all SEC type of list guys as true freshmen, as true sophomores. So we're already seeing that pay off. So one little blip in a moment of time where things are kind of in flux, I just don't worry about it all that much.
Okay, Kyle, I'm not going to let you off the hook. We're gonna stay on it. I'm going to keep the pressure on, because Hugh has his guy. He went out and got Jackson Arnold, and he is completely enamored with him. And you just spoke about the wide receivers, the weapons that are out there, that he's going to have at his availability. He's going to be able to use them. So I want to know how you and the average Auburn fan, because I feel like you kind of have a pretty good bead on that. Like, how is it that you guys feel about Jackson Arnold? Do you trust Oklahoma and the fact that the kid was just confused, like literally, like he was not misled, but unclear on what he was being asked to do? Is it going to be different? How do you feel?
I think it depends on which Auburn fan you talk to. I think Auburn fans have been burned by the quarterback position a lot as of late, and some of that is not necessarily completely on the quarterback. My biggest complaint, just to kind of tangent for a second here, has been the inconsistent play of the offensive line, not necessarily singling out any individual there, but the lack of consistent support from the offensive line for the quarterback, for the running game, and frankly, for these amazing wide receivers that we have.
Yeah.
So you relate that to Jackson Arnold. If you go and do your research, you'll find that, yes, Jackson Arnold struggled last year, but there were a lot of good reasons for why he struggled. Some of those are probably his own fault, some bad habits that were developed, bad decision-making. He's young. He's got that kind of stuff's going to happen. So I see a lot of people removing the possibility of someone growing, getting better, changing, especially when they get a fresh take on things. Can we just look at a different Auburn example? Bo Nix. Look, he was a Heisman Trophy front runner at one point in his final year at Oregon. Here, outside of a few amazing plays, you wouldn't have known much about him other than his dad was Patrick Nix. He had pretty much a struggle because he was not supported well. So I love that there's synergy between Hugh and Jackson Arnold. That's step number one. You got to have that. Is the support there for him to not get back into some of those bad habits, to not feel as confident? And I think that's what Hugh talked a lot about today. He wants Jackson Arnold to feel confident that he has not only the support in terms of, how to say, emotional or all that kind of stuff, but you're going to go out there and those guys are going to hold the line for you for at least 3 seconds, let you find one of these amazing targets that Auburn we know has and seems to have, and guys that we haven't got to see out in the field quite yet.
Well, I'm with you there, the synergy. And I'm going to throw Hugh some roses here and say that the thing I heard from him today, more than anything, both around Jackson Arnold and just the own questions about how he's spending his time, right? He didn't turn away from any of those things. He sounded like the confident head coach that Auburn thought they were hiring. today.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
some people just don't like Hugh, and that's whatever it is. But if you're looking at it just from the perspective of who is he now, then I thought it is a guy who is not shying away from expectations. In fact, maybe he's ramping them up a little bit in his own way.
Mhm.
He's like, I think we're going to be pretty good. I expect we're going to be in the conversation for the playoff. That kind of talk. And so kudos to him for being that guy. I mean, that's got to make you feel good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is the stuff that you're supposed to hear, and it's good to hear that that's coming out of him. Hugh's been notorious for maybe saying too much at times, not necessarily like in a Charles Barkley type of way or a Lane Kiffin type of way, but just he's very frank and very honest when he gets up there to the microphone. And sometimes that lends itself to being misunderstood. You know, there was a time, I think it was like May, where there's a big hubbub because he said something to the effect of, people interpreted that he was saying, "Oh, bowl game was the only expectation." And I listened to the quote myself, and I'm like, "Where did y'all get this from? Like, are we that bored? Everybody just take it." Here's my theme tonight: Auburn fans, take a chill pill. Sorry, that's just my theme tonight. I love what I heard out of Hugh. Here's why. The word that I took away from SEC Media Days, not just from Hugh, not just from the three guys, but it sounds like it's across the board in the program, is assessment. They talked a lot today about these psychological or personality tests that not just the players were required to take, and the portal guys too, but the coaches themselves, including Hugh, and trying to figure out, hey, what are we doing wrong? What am I doing wrong to make this process through this first year that hasn't worked that great yet? So I love that. I love I'm a big fan of self-awareness, Randy. Like,
Me
it's
too.
like my top. You just don't get me started about a lack of self-awareness just in life. Sorry, I'm already thinking of things I want to go on a rant about that. But I appreciate that about Hugh. I do like some of the words, some of the phrases, the excitement that seems to be there. Because if you look at Hugh when he first gets hired at Auburn, there's an excitement there. I'll never forget the first official press conference he did, like at, I think it was spring practice. The dude just looked like he got hit by a bus, meaning like, I didn't realize it was this bad. And he kind of said that to the effect, yeah, it was that bad. That's what we put ourselves in a position with some bad choices. And I'm not just talking about a hire, but the reason that we got to the hire before him.
Right.
Anyway, so you're right. I think you can slice it up any way you want. Some people are going to say I didn't hear anything I liked. To me, I walked away feeling pretty positive about what he said today.
You used assessment. I have another A word, because once you get the assessment done, then you can live up to the accountability piece, right? And that has to be there if you're going to compete. If you're going to win, everybody has to be accountable. And I think Hugh knows that. I mean, I think he's in the year of his tenure there, where, okay, we got to start cranking this thing up a little bit. So we'll see. Now, just on the issue of, he thinks they're going to compete. He thinks they're going to be, up for the playoff. I have heard people today, and it is media days, but I have heard people today say that the roster at Auburn this year is the best it's been since 2019, to be conservative. I even heard one person say 2004.
Oh,
that
wow.
that knocked me back a little bit right there. So you let me know, how crazy is that kind of talk? Is it crazy?
It's not. 2004 is a little bit out there. I'm just going to be honest. We haven't had that bad of teams for that long. We've had some really great football teams across the board since 2004. Now, since 2019, you're probably swinging right to the fences right there with that one. That's look. I'm not going to sit here and say that all the Auburn teams since that time that have not had the potential to be better. We've seen that. You've seen that. Georgia's walked into Jordan-Hare Stadium against teams that had no business competing with that Georgia team, and that Auburn team being the one that's competing against them. Same thing with the Alabama situation. It's the nightmare of playing Jordan-Hare for some people a lot of the time. But certainly 2019 feels like the last time, pre-COVID, obviously, that things felt quite normal at Auburn in terms of every facet of it. I do like what the roster looks like right now. It feels more complete, less patchworked. It feels very much built from the ground up and using the transfer portal how it's best used, in my opinion, which is putting pieces that are just slight pieces that are missing to bring the puzzle together, as opposed to taking a full transfer portal class just to make up your roster, which he had to do in his first year. So 2019, yes. 2004, it's a bit of a stretch, but maybe they can make a case to me if I ever get to talk to them who made that statement.
Well, it was one of the beat writers, one of the guys who covers the program closely. Forgive me for not recalling his name, but it got my attention when I heard that number. But he wasn't making the claim. He was saying that people around the program were saying that, and that's why he felt brave enough to echo it. So that is what it is. Now, we're getting near the end, but I can't let you go, because the thing about Georgia and Auburn is that it's like, I always call it like a bizarro rivalry. They're so similar in so many ways. This seems to be the game for Georgia fans that everybody points to and says that's where Georgia's going to lose this year, right? A game that maybe you look at it and you're like, that's the one they should beat Auburn, whatever that means, should beat Auburn, but they're going to lose that one at night at Auburn. How crazy is that? Is it crazy? Do you think Georgia's going to lose to Auburn when they come see them?
Well, how about this? I think if there was a setup for a game to go Auburn's way, this year, it's this year against Georgia. It's the first night game, as you and I discussed on one of my shows, in Jordan-Hare in decades at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of hype. You can just go look at the secondary market ticket prices, and there's a lot of excitement about that ticket. It's not as much as the Iron Bowl, but it's getting close to it. I think the energy there is there for this. I think the desire is there. You heard Keldrick Fault today when the point was brought up to him, and I don't know if you want to open this can or not, that Auburn and Georgia may not be on each other's schedule every year if certain things were to transpire with updated schedules. First of all, that can't happen. Second of all, look, it's important to these guys. A lot of Auburn's players are from Georgia. This means something to them to beat your home state where you're from. And even if you're not from that state, you share a giant border with each other. You're so much connected. I call it connective tissue.
Yeah.
Yes, Georgia needs to be worried. Now, does that mean that that's a guaranteed win? Absolutely not. What I heard from Kirby Smart today was the excitement of energy around the program right now amongst the players and stuff like that. Those type of words were being used. So that tells me there's a rejuvenation there that can be a little bit scary outside looking in. So yes, both teams need to come ready to play. And I know the fans are going to be, because this one's going to be so much fun on that fall. Hopefully just a wisp of that fall air whipping into Jordan-Hare, and the Dogs and the Tigers at night will be fun.
Well, I think I told you before, I'm holding out hope that will be my first trip to the Plains. How does it go? The most beautiful little city on the plain?
The loveliest village on the plains.
Thank you. That would be my first visit. So I'm holding out hope that I can make that one happen. And if it works out, I'm going to come find you wherever you are. I'm going to come find you. So
I'm all over the campus. So you just got to pin me down. That's all. Good luck. Tiger Walk is a very easy place to pin me down.
Okay, so like I said, we're putting a bow on it. We just talked about Georgia-Auburn head-to-head. You sort of hinted that Georgia looks different right now than they've looked the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. This is your chance to analyze my squad. So what do you think about the 25 Georgia team? How are you sizing them up in July?
It feels, just sitting back here, not having, the eyes on Georgia as much as obviously you would, that Georgia underperformed a little bit last year, and that is unacceptable given where they're at with Kirby Smart, and that some of that language that was used today, that leads me to believe that we're going to see a Georgia that comes out ready to pop a little bit this year. Will that new rejuvenation peak before Auburn? I don't think so. I hope not. I'm hoping for the just slobber knocker of a game that's going to be epic and it's going to break all the TV ratings and stuff like that from both teams. I'm going to lean more right now where I'm sitting at that Georgia is going to be a contender this year. And whereas some people are maybe a little bit more higher on Alabama. Sorry, Herb and Roger, if you're over there. That Georgia may be a little bit more formidable than people are expecting right now.
So what would you put Georgia's floor and ceiling at? And when you say contender, remember, we're in the new world. So
New
are
world,
you
yeah.
referring to the SEC or are you referring to CFP or both?
Or as I say, I think you got to have both in it. You look at the SEC right now, probably the couple of names that shoot to the top always at this moment: Texas, Georgia, Alabama. LSU is going to be up there, obviously, as well. I'd find Georgia. Everybody wants to put Alabama at the top right now, but I feel like that group of four right there is everybody that's vying, is the most obvious choice, is vying for the SEC at this current time. So I think that's where I would place it right now. I would say playoff team easily at this moment. I don't see any reason to not think that Georgia can't be a playoff team and have the playoff expectation. Whereas comparing that to Auburn, the way Hugh said it, we should be in the conversation. If you pay attention to what Hugh said, if you're an Auburn fan, don't read too much into it. That's what he said. We got to be in the conversation. And that means that you might actually find yourself in that. I would say Georgia's not just in the conversation. They are the conversation with a group of others right now.
Do you think a 3-loss SEC squad is going to have a chance to get in, or do you think you have to have 2 losses?
I would prefer it only be 2 losses. How about that? I struggle with that one because I'm not this big rah-rah SEC guy. I know that's counterproductive. I'm not that. I think 2 losses should be the standard. Now, I'm not going to complain if an Auburn 3-loss team gets into the playoffs. Of course, I'll be a little hypocritical there, but I just feel like that should be the standard. 2 losses is fair to get into the playoffs, I feel like.
All right. That's why I asked the floor ceiling question because,
yeah.
I mean, I was talking to Chris Marler last night and I was like, yeah, I can make an argument for Georgia at 9-3. But I could also make an argument for 11-1. And he wouldn't even let me finish the statement. He was like, just shush, just hush, because he, like you, thinks that Georgia has a bone to pick with a bunch of folks, starting with themselves, and that's going to make them, a dangerous team. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll hear about that. Let me make sure I answer the question. I like that 10-2 mark, but it would not shock me to go to see Georgia go 9-3. It's the SEC, and so I think that gets back to your question you were asking within that about the playoff. I just feel like 10-2 should be the standard to get into the playoff. After that point, we're just arguing. We're getting back to these days where we're just arguing all the time about who's getting that last spot, who's got enough who's got the more quality losses. That nobody asked me my opinions on how things should be done. They asked me, what do you think? But that's where I would sit, whether we're talking about Georgia or not.
Okay, last thing, I promise. What is the funniest or most unusual thing that you heard today from SEC Media Days around your squad?
I think the funniest thing that made me LOL was when Keldrick Falk realized that, or not even realized, I guess, had the awareness brought to him that it was a possibility, or even thought that Auburn and Georgia couldn't play every single year. I think that speaks to this rivalry. Like, it was just funny to watch his face go, wait, what did she say? Like, can someone spell that out for me? Like, surely you're not saying what I think you're saying, but no, the reporter, I forget her name, did suggest that, and he's like, "Oh, that." He just kept stuttering. That can't happen. So that was funny. And look, and this wasn't even from the day, but Lane Kiffin, he's just a silly dude. Like, I mean, he's having fun with the whole Hugh Freeze golf thing. He's been sending social media posts out. Hugh's gotten him back in some ways when, not to go down some rabbit holes here. It's the dynamic between Auburn and Ole Miss has been building over the last several years, especially with Lane there. And I kind of enjoy it because it's nice to have something extra building amongst the tradition, outside of the traditional rivalries that we have.
Nice. Kyle, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it, man. I know you've had a busy day like I have. I know your day is not done. So I'm going to let you get on out of here, get some water, wet the whistle, so we can keep this thing going.
Appreciate it.
And just
I
know
appreciate that.
you're always welcome over here. One of the few Auburn fans, and not I'm not saying anything about the fan base. I'm just saying that remember, my house is a house divided. So I can't handle Florida. The missus can't handle Auburn. So she doesn't know that I've got you on here, and I've got a buddy who's an Auburn guy. So give me a
Keep it
break.
down home.
I know. All right, man. Get on out of here. Have a good time the rest of the evening, and I'm sure I will see you down the road.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, buddy.
All right.
So there you have it, friends. That's Kyle from the E2C Network, one of the good Auburn War Eagle Plainsmen, Tigers. Okay, that's what that is. I got to sneak that in there because, I mean, he knows that he's welcome here anytime, but he also knows
I don't care for Auburn.
I had to do it. I could not do it, Kyle. So when you watch this on the replay, just hit me up on text if that was an issue. All right, guys. So we're moving on. That was Auburn. And again, that's the way they were originally supposed to show up at ATL today. But something happened, and our Georgia Bulldogs were the first team to the podium. I'm not sure why, but that's how it went down. And it's just like I told you last week. SEC Media Days it's this way for every team. It's kind of like a state of the union for every team, every coach that steps up there. They're going to come, they're going to deliver their message, whatever that is. Kirby Smart's no different, and he's not going to show up in Atlanta without a purpose. And the sergeants, right, the lieutenants, the players that he brings with him, they are going to deliver that message too, because it's all they've heard for the last 6 months. So you sort of have an idea of what it is you're going to hear when they come. But Kirby always keeps it interesting. You're never quite sure what it is you're going to hear. And of course, today we heard some things that made some news. Now, the thing about this is it wasn't just Auburn, Georgia, and Texas. Tennessee was also there. And there were questions about Tennessee. So I decided, let's just knock two birds out with one stone. Let me reach out to my buddy, Jed May at UGAsports.com, and let him sort of tell us what's going on with both of these programs. And don't worry, we're going to drill down a little bit further on the other side, but I wanted Jay to kick us off. So we welcome in Jed May, friend of the show of UGAsports.com, part of the Rivals on 3 network, who is at SEC Media Days today. He's going to let us know everything that's going on with Georgia. So, Jed, before we get into any of that, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing good. It's day 2, almost halfway through the week, and yeah, it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, well, you know, we were joking before we got on here, just living the dream, right? That's what it's all about.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where like you got to kind of take a step back from it and like, yeah, it is pretty cool to hear from all these coaches and passionate fan bases and all that kind of stuff leading up to the season for sure.
Right. So with SEC Media Days being back here in Atlanta, right? Being in Georgia, obviously today might be the biggest day of the whole week. The Dogs are in town. Texas is in town. But we're only going to focus on Georgia here for the moment. When Kirby stepped to the podium, I had said earlier this week that I think he's really going to come in there and lay down the tone, right? He's going to set the tone. He's going to lay it out for you. And it really sounded to me like he spent his time at the mic today sort of doubling down on everything that he's been telling us for the last few months, like about who and what Georgia is exactly. So is that the vibe that you got? Because that's kind of how it felt to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of, again, like you said, the same stuff we heard in the spring. We want guys who have fire, passion, and energy. We want, he had the line that was, we sell relationships, not transactions, as far as bringing guys in the program. So, yeah, I think there was some serious, I guess, looking in the mirror at the end of last season. And he mentioned in the spring what was missing from last year's team that never really seemed to click in all 3 phases for any extended period of time. And I think they've settled on this fire, passion, and energy thing. And he said, look, a lot of guys nowadays, players, can say, okay, this is a pretty cushy life. I'm at a major college. I'm making 6 figures. I don't need to be hungry. And Kirby Smart's basically said, like, yeah, we need those guys that are hungry, because if you're not hungry, you're not going to reach your goals. So I think that's been a huge emphasis, like you said, since they got back from New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, pretty much. And they, like you said, he doubled down on it today once again.
It feels like a continuation because in the last couple of years we've heard him talk about battling complacency at the University of Georgia because they've had so much success. How do you do that? What do you do? And last year, he came in with a different mantra and all those sorts of things. So in a way, this sort of feels like a continuation of that, except maybe now they've hit the target, right? They figured out you can have great players, but the layer of NIL and portal and stuff adds another level of complexity to that. So first you had great players who might just rest on their laurels, their athleticism, but now you add this in. It kind of feels like an evolution, yet another problem in this new landscape of college football. Agree?
Yeah, for sure. They've got to figure out the guys who are hungry. And again, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but he mentioned today 54% of the roster is in either their first or second year in the program. So obviously that counts transfers, but that's it's all over the place. The depth is so hard to come by. And these guys, it's kind of what we saw a little bit in that 2022 season where you had guys who didn't necessarily play as big of a role in 21 and they want to win a national championship for themselves in 2022. I think it's kind of the same thing. These guys, the guys who were on the roster in that 22 season, Gunnar Stockton, is a freshman who was, I guess, third on the depth chart at best. Um, he didn't win a national championship in terms of being a huge participant. A guy like Dalen Everett, who's been around a long time, a guy like CJ Allen has played a lot, has been here since 2023, hasn't tasted that national championship success. So I think all the what complacency you might have had, not to say that there was a ton, but there's so many of these guys now who want to prove that they can get to that level of success, win a championship. And that combined with just the youth of guys who haven't played that much on any stage, I think that has injected a bunch of enthusiasm and energy into the program through spring practice and summer workouts.
Oh, well, let's just sit right there for a second because the quotes that stood out to me today from Kirby, he actually said, let's go get the ones that aren't transactional, right? Because I talk a
Hmm.
lot about how the superstructure at Georgia is the way it is because of the way Kirby builds the program, which is through high school recruiting and things like that. And he spoke directly about the fire, passion, and energy and not having it be a transaction. And when he said that, my ears really perked up because they have been successful on the recruiting trail for sure. And more often than not, it is not a financially based decision in terms of people choosing Georgia. So I think, he's driving home that point, and we saw it there. And to your point about the youth on the team and the inexperience, he also made it a point to say you don't speed up the development of a player like it used
Hmm.
to take 2 or 3 years. There's no way to make that any faster. You just have to get your guys ready quicker. Who does the best with what they have? Did you get any feel from him or the players or anything that's the kind of vibe that they are just all about? They're like, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be better than the next guy, meaning whoever they're playing. Is that sort of everybody's comfortable there, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, I mean the development for sure you can't speed it up. And look no farther than Gunnar Stockton, right? He's a guy who has been developing, waiting in the wings for 3 years to now get his opportunity. And I think something interesting Kirby Smart said today is when NFL GMs come to Athens for pro day or practices or whatever, they say like, look, we can't develop you in the NFL because we don't have enough practices, we don't have enough available reps to focus on development. So if you're a player, you want to get better, you need to take advantage of those reps at the college level because if you're lucky enough to get to the NFL, there's only so much development that can happen. So yeah, and like you said, you can't speed it up. There's not a magical time machine. There's not a portal. There is a portal, but not that kind of portal. To just snap your fingers and say, okay, this kid who's going to take 2 years to become a starter, let's snap our fingers and get it done in 12, 18 months. It takes what it takes. Every kid is different. You obviously have the kids who are talented enough to play as freshmen, and you got some guys who it takes longer. So you got a guy like Ellis Robinson who has all the talent in the world coming out of high school, and it has taken him time to develop to where he will likely have a bigger role in the secondary this year. So every kid is different, and I think they've embraced that. Every journey is different, every path is different, but development is at the center of it all.
And it's not just the coaches, right? The players feel that way too. Like they buy into it. They're about it. They understand the work.
Yeah, for sure. And there's guys who it's funny because we were talking about how young the roster is, but you've got
Right.
some guys in key spots who have been around. You think of Stockton, you think of CJ Allen's in his third year. One guy that I think people don't talk about a lot is Ja'Cory Thomas, who I think is in his fourth year in the program and has never really like burst onto the scene as a major contributor, at least on defense. He plays special teams, and he's the guy who could end up starting next to KJ Bolden in the secondary at safety. So guys like that who just kind of wait. Or I mean, Drew Bobo is another one who's been around for a while and is now lining up to be your starting center. So just so many examples of that of guys who. I mean, you work while you wait. I don't know when that mantra was thrown out from a Georgia perspective, but all these guys know, like, hey, I am going every practice rep matters. This is going to matter down the line, whether it's this season, next spring, whatever. Every rep you take every day is going to matter if you're going to end up playing in Georgia at some point.
Well, we were talking about doing what we do better than what they do. That's how you win. That's how you get the
Hmm.
edge. In the breakout sessions this morning, as a beat writer, UJ Sports had the opportunity to ask some questions of the players and stuff like that, and the coaches. It sounds like they are identifying the core of what Georgia is, which is run the football, be dominant on the lines of scrimmage. Can you tell me more about what they said there?
Yeah, I mean, Kirby Smart said it as simple as you could say it. We quote, here's the quote: "We have to be better at running the ball and better at stopping the run." So that's as easy as you can get it. You know, the run game wasn't great last year. Stopping the run hasn't been. It's been good, but not at the level of those national championship defenses over the past couple of years. And I think that's something that has been a big emphasis this offseason. And Smart said, let me find it. This summer, we've changed some things that we're doing where we're saying, okay, how do we get better at running the ball? We've got to run the ball more. We've got to practice running the ball more. That's a big point of emphasis for it. So it's been no secret. They're not hiding from it. They're not just trying to brush off excuses. They know, Smart knows they need to run the ball better, both just over the course of a game, right? But also, you get down to those last stretches, you got to run the ball to put the game away. You know,
Right.
so that's what Georgia Tech did so well to very nearly get out of that game in Athens was they were run the ball all game long. So they know they need to run the ball better. They know they need to stop it better. And I think if you do that, that's going to be that's all this talk about Gunner Stockton. Can you do this? Can you do that? If you don't run the ball better than you did last year, it's not going to matter who your quarterback is. If you're Georgia, that's going to open up so much and create so much for this offense with all the playmakers they got on the outside. So it's not a secret. They're attacking it head on, and we'll see. How it looks here in I guess 6 or 7 weeks when the season kicks off.
Well, Georgia's not the only team in town today. I mean, the Texas Longhorns are there. They're also considered a favorite inside the conference to win the championship and compete for more. But last year, well, let's talk about another team, Tennessee, who's there today. They made the CFP last year. What exactly did you hear from Heupel? What is the team looking like up there? I mean, I know the number one thing that everybody wants to know about is how's the quarterback position now that Nico is no longer there. So, what is the deal with Tennessee? Are they getting ready? How do they feel about their opportunities here in 25?
Yeah, Heupel got ahead of the quarterback question. He said it's going to be a competition at fall camp. It's Joey Aguilar, Jake Merklinger, and George McIntyre. I think Aguilar, given his that he's has more experience in college football, even though it's not necessarily the Power Five level, I think he's the favorite. I would say, but I think what Heupel said, and this has been kind of it was Auburn was in town today, and they kind of got the same question a lot. How do you get to the next level? Like, okay, you made the playoff, but making the playoff isn't necessary. I don't want to say it's not an achievement, but making the playoff in the 12-team era is different than making it in the 14 era. I think it's fair
Right.
to say. And they got there and they got drilled by Ohio State, who obviously went on a great run and won the national championship. And Tennessee hasn't beaten Georgia in the Heupel era. I think they're 2-2 against Alabama, which is good. They beat them twice in Knoxville. They haven't been able to beat Georgia, and I think that's the one a big pivot point game because Tennessee. That's the SEC opener for both teams. It's in Knoxville, and I think from a Georgia perspective, you look at that game before, and it's like, okay, it's in Knoxville. I don't, maybe it's a night game. I'm not 100% sure, but that's a tough environment, and it's still going to be a tough environment. But that game looks a lot different with Nico Iamaleava starting year two in the SEC, all that stuff, versus let's say it's Joey Aguilar making his first SEC start. Right? There's a
Right.
lot of that's a different feeling to that game. Then you add in You got to replace Dylan Sampson, who ran for like 80 touchdowns. You got to replace James Pierce, who was, I think, a first round pick. There's a lot of stuff you've got to replace if you're Tennessee. So they're a team that I think is simultaneously trying to figure out how to get to that next level, but also you've got to replace a lot at some key positions.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, obviously, they like to run the ball first, and Georgia's been successful against Tennessee because they can stop that run game and then lock down the pass game because it's not that complicated
Mhm.
in terms of what they do. If they're not going to be able to lean on that pass game and that run game because of Sampson being gone, what are they going to turn to if they're going to try to make that move? What does the 25 volunteer team lean on to sort of hang their hat and name their identity?
Yeah, I mean, they better hope Joey Aguilar picks things up quick. I mean, they are benefited by they play Syracuse week 1 actually here in Atlanta in Mercedes-Benz, which again Syracuse isn't necessarily on the level of a Georgia or an Alabama, but they are at least a Power Four team. So you get whoever's starting a quarterback, you get their feet wet from that perspective. But it's so tough because in this, you got the RPO kind of offense, you got to make the decisions really fast.
Right.
And when the game speeds up, the decision making process has got to speed up. And I think that's going to be something that if it's Aguilar, or if it's Merklinger, or whoever, that's what they've got to adjust to is how fast you've got to make these snap decisions and reads and all that stuff to avoid turning the ball over or, you should throw it and you hand it off. You should hand it off and you should throw it. It's all that kind of stuff. So, and Aguilar just got there in May. Like it's not like he was even a spring transfer. So, it's a big question. I think we're not even going to really. I think the Georgia Tennessee game is going to tell us a lot. 'Cause again, Syracuse, Fran Brown's doing good things there, but I still think they're not quite to that top tier level of the ACC. I think that the Georgia game is going to show a lot of what Tennessee is going to be in 2025. If it's a close game, then they're a team that can make some noise. If Georgia goes in and dominates, then it could be a little bit more of a struggle for Tennessee.
Well, you don't work the Tennessee beat, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question here. Where are you going to put the Volunteers? What do you think the 25 season looks like for them? Do you think they're going to step back a little bit just simply because of the uncertainty? I mean, that's the way it sounds.
Yeah, I think they will because I think Georgia will go in there and win. Um, I think going to Alabama is always a tough ask. So that's 2 losses right there. Um, I'll be honest, I don't know the rest of their schedule off the top of my head, but I mean it's the SEC, right? It's really hard. So again, but then there's also a scenario where Aguilar comes in and hits her from the ground running, right? And there is that the high end potential, I think. But I think the more likely scenario is this is a year where they lose 3 or 4 games. And then if we look way down the line, 26, you'll then have, I don't know how much eligibility Aguilar has, but you'll have a quarterback who's more kind of burst in their offense and what it takes to win in the SEC. And to 26, Tennessee could be one of those conference championship contenders again. But I think it's going to be difficult in 25 just because of what they have to replace all over the team, especially at quarterback.
Well, Jay, I know you're busy out there, so I know we joked about living the dream, but I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking some time to come on here and chat with us and let everybody know exactly what was going on down at the College Football Hall of Fame at SEC Media Days this year. I appreciate your time, buddy.
Absolutely, Randy. Anytime.
There are things I can't say on YouTube, but I say them on How About Them Dogs Plus. Want to learn more? Just click the link below. Go premium. Be elite. Thanks to our good buddy Jed May for sitting in with me this afternoon for a few minutes to tell us about the dogs up close and personal. And by the way, you just saw the promo for How About Them Dogs Plus, and I just want to remind everybody, give it a shot. Check it out. It's out there. It's fun. It's good. Lots of good stuff. If you haven't looked at it, I hope you'll give it a look soon. I want to take a second now, though. We've got a little time to kill before our next guest comes on with us. So this is sort of free-flowing open discussion time. And it's going to be focused on our Georgia Bulldogs. Like I said from the very beginning, Kirby Smart is the one who I told you was going to come to come to Atlanta and let you know what the deal was in Athens heading into the season. He was going to lay down the mantra for this year. What's it going to be Who are we and what do we want the world to know about us as we get there? And one of the things that popped up today that Kirby said that got my attention was the way he was talking about the players that were there with him. And of course, one in particular, Gunnar Stockton. One of the quotes that Kirby had today in reference to Gunnar in his opening remarks was that Gunnar is a winner. And personally, I thought that was important because throughout this entire offseason, the one thing I've said about Gunnar was that I wasn't overly concerned about him. I thought he did a good job in Texas. I thought he did a good job against Notre Dame, especially given what was happening around him. And honestly, I thought he played well enough to win that game if he had gotten any kind of help from the run game, or if his receivers hadn't dropped so many balls, or if his tackles had not just gotten whipped because they had injury issues and stuff like that. So there was so much going on around that Notre Dame game. There are no excuses. Notre Dame won the game. They ran the ball, which is what I was talking about with Jed. They ran the ball when they wanted to. And Georgia realized that. And they had a little bit of like I think Jed said it this way, looking in the mirror at themselves and saying, this is not who we are. And for Kirby Smart to come out today and say, listen, we're going to run the ball better one way or another. We are either going to physically move people the way the 21 and 22 teams did with massive road grading offensive lines, and we're going to run it that way. Or if we find out we can't do that, we are going to have a scheme. We're going to have a plan so that we can scheme our run game open. And when he talks about that, I don't think he's talking about swinging, like you've heard him say in the past from the podium. A swing pass is essentially a pitch in the run game. I don't think that's what we're talking about when he's talking about scheme. I think what we're talking about is the way they're going to block it up, the way they're going to ask different backs to do different things. So that's exciting, and it's something to look forward to. But one thing's for certain is it is a priority inside the building that they do better. So that was the first thing that Kirby said. But the second thing, going back to Gunnar, he said Gunnar is a winner. And I thought that was important because the reason I have not had any concerns about Gunnar is I get that he was behind players in Athens. He was behind Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, and when Stetson was there, he was technically behind him too, right? There were a lot of talented players in front of him. And he had to wait his turn, but he did. If you go back prior to his time in Athens, and I understand it's high school, it is not the same thing, but he was a national Gatorade Player of the Year. He was the best player in the state of Georgia. He broke all of the passing records, but from the likes of Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. The guy who's going to be taking snaps at Georgia in the fall, Gunnar Stockton, broke all their records. Didn't just break them, shattered them. Okay? So I'm not concerned because I know the moxie, the makeup of who and what Gunnar is. Now, I was not born and raised in Rabun County, but I was born and raised a couple stones throw from Rabun County. So I know who and what the people are like up there. And I'm telling you, the guy who's going to be taking snaps for Georgia this year is going to have all of those intangibles that you want in a player. Just like Kirby said today from the podium, he is a winner. He is a guy who leads from the front. He's the guy that you want at the front of the line if you are a football team. I heard Kirby say that, and it absolutely cemented everything that I was doggone sure I knew about Gunnar Stockton. I'm just not concerned about him. Now, physically, we'll see. He plays the game differently than Carson Beck played it. He is not somebody who maybe is going to layer his throws shallow and intermediate levels. He is going to be a guy who is going to look to get the ball down the field, intermediate and deep. That's what Gunnar likes to do. He throws a beautiful deep ball, and he's going to push the football down the field. That's different. It's different. The way Kirby Smart wants his offense to run is to first do no harm. Don't turn the ball over. Control it. Let's run it. Let's put points on the board. He will let Mike Bobo do everything he can inside a box, but there is a box. So Mike is not going to roll out there and start going 5 wide and making the Georgia offense look like something out of the old Big 12. That's not who and what Georgia is. You know the philosophy. We're going to run the ball when we want to. We're going to play action. We're going to take shots when they're there. And we're going to dominate the game. We're going to dictate the play of our opponent. So inside that box that Kirby is going to put Mike in his play calling, you have to figure out what Gunner can do best. And in the run game, how can you give yourself an advantage via scheme, blocking assignments, formation, all of those kinds of things. But they've addressed the problem. It's just like I was talking about in the last segment. You have to assess the situation, because once you do, then you have to be held accountable for making it better. There is no doubt in my mind that Kirby Smart and everyone in that building understands the white hot focus that is on them since the end of last year, especially among the Georgia people and from the man at the top, which would be Kirby Smart. I am positive he has let it be known this is not what we're going to do moving forward. It will be better. We are going to figure out a way to make it happen. So when it comes to Gunner, I already felt good about him. And then I heard Kirby step up to the podium today and say, everything you're thinking, Randy, is exactly who this guy is. So no, I don't have any questions about Gunner Stockton. Physically, we'll see. We'll see. He plays a more physical game than Carson Beck did. He is not fleet of foot the way Stetson was, but he is absolutely a dual threat quarterback. He will absolutely pull the ball on the read. It's not automatically going to go in the belly of Robinson or Frazier and they're going to take it up the field. If that guy doesn't close, he'll give it. But if that guy squeezes down, your defensive end, your read man, if he squeezes down, Gunner's going to pull it. We saw him do it against Texas. We're going to see quarterback draws. We're going to see a different offense inside the box that Kirby gives Mike the leeway to run. And I think, especially given the history between Mike Bobo and Gunner Stockton, that there's a synergy there and that it's going to be a good thing. I'm old enough to be a huge fan of the bootleg and the naked bootleg. I expect more than once, and it's going to look a little bit different because of the way they scheme it up at that level, but I expect we're going to see a bootleg play where people have to respect the fact that Gunner could pull it down and run if you don't go with him. And the minute you come up to play that run threat, then he's just going to drop it off to one of those talented tight ends or one of those fleet of foot slot receivers, just like a long handoff, right? Just 5 yards down the field, take the ball, because he draws the defender up, distributes the ball, and then they're off to the races. I expect we're going to see that over and over and over out of different formations this year. And that's just one thing. Keep in mind that before, Gunner Stockton was committed to the University of Georgia, which is where he always wanted to be. He was committed to the University of South Carolina because the offensive coordinator at South Carolina was Mike Bobo. So years ago, Gunner Stockton cast his lot with Mike Bobo. That is going to be the story, I think, of the Georgia offense early on. Those two know each other incredibly well. They understand the skill sets. They understand what they're trying to do. I just think that watching them work together as one mind is going to look a lot better than maybe some nervous Georgia fans think it's going to look. And notice, I haven't really said anything at all about the addition of these new weapons that are out there, other than to say that if Gunner Stockton is the guy pulling the trigger, if he has any semblance of a running game, if his offense manages to stay at all more healthy than they were last year, then he is going to sit in the pocket and put the ball down the field. The 15 to 20 yard ins and outs, those are going to be the routes you're going to see. The skinny posts down the field, they're going to put stress on the back end of defenses at every opportunity. And just like we saw in the Sugar Bowl, we're going to see Gunner Stockton, who stood in the pocket and took a helmet right to the chin on the deep ball that he delivered to Arian Smith down the sideline where the referee was interfered with. That play should tell you everything you need to know about Gunner's ability and willingness to stand in the pocket, take a shot, not be a runner first, and push the football down the field. That is exciting to me. Because again, I'm just going to bring you back to the fact, if Georgia has a running game that looks anything at all the way the running game has looked, if you go back and look at 21, 22, 23, if you go back to those years, if Georgia's anywhere near that, then there are going to be opportunities down the field. And we know, because we've seen it, that Gunner Stockton is the guy who's going to stand in there and deliver it. So when Kirby Smart stepped to the podium today and said those things about Gunner Stockton, I got to tell you, I felt so good about it. Gunner is not somebody, and I told you this sitting here a couple of weeks ago, he was never anybody who was going to go to media days and just talk up a storm. He's not going to someday be a podcaster, right? Unless maybe he's doing an ASMR podcast about his cows. Maybe. That would be the only way. He doesn't have a lot to say. He doesn't care about social media. He's not in it for the glitz and glam. Somebody asked him this morning in the breakout session prior to the car wash, as it were, of the SEC Media Day circuit, just the ones among the beat writers, they asked him, are you doing anything with whatever NIL funds you might have? Are you doing things for your family? How are you spending your money? And Gunner Stockton was like, I don't really spend my money. I don't like to spend my money, And keep in mind, this is a young guy, but it just speaks to who and what he is. It reminds me of the people that I grew up with, That's just not who Gunner Stockton is. It's not about the flash. It's about the results. Will he be able to achieve the results he hopes to achieve in a Georgia uniform? Because remember, he's a guy just like Stetson Bennett who dreamed of playing at the University of Georgia. It's not just the place he wound up playing. It's the place when he was 3-4 years old, he would put on the Georgia football uniform with the plastic helmet and the fake shoulder pads and tuck his red jersey in his white football pants and go run around in the front yard. It's a lifelong thing for Gunner. Coach is talking about fire, passion, and energy. Gunner and players like him have that and more. They have an attachment to their hearts about the University of Georgia. So just like Stetson Bennett, I want him to be successful because that would be the dream for him. Georgia, if they are successful, we will be happy. Obviously, Georgia's winning. Great plays are being made. If this offense is rolling out there and putting up 40 points a game when they step off the bus, then Georgia is clearly an SEC championship contender, and they are absolutely a CFP contender, and it couldn't happen to a better dude if Gunner's the one who's healthy and making that offense run. There's so much I'm allowing myself to get all personally wrapped up in the narrative because it's so good. He's just a good dude, and he wants to win for Georgia. He wants to win for his teammates, and then he wants to win for himself. He's tough as nails emotionally because he's the son of a coach. He said as much today, I can take a good hard chewing. I know what that's like. So the mental aspect of it is not something that's going to make him wither. The physical aspect is certainly not something he's going to shy away from. Just think about the way he played in the Texas game. He's going to put his body on the line, and it is going to be the kind of thing that if I have any question about Gunner, it's the fact that I hope he can make it through the season healthy because he's going to lay it on the line for Georgia. He's going to go to bat for his teammates every time. He doesn't know another way to play the game. As Georgia fans, we should be super excited about that. So when Kirby said, that's the guy you want at the front of the line, I thought, perfect. That's the guy I want at the front of the line because I know that guy. I know who Gunner is, even though I've never met him, because I know that guy. He's the guy that I grew up with. He's the guy that if I had had sons, or if my daughters ever come to me and tell me they want to play football, I'm going to tell them this is how you play the game. And it's going to be the way Gunnar Stockton plays the game. Hard-nosed, physical. You play like you mean it, with intention. Your teammates matter. Your jersey matters. Not the name on the back, the symbol on the front. So that got me started good today when I heard Kirby talking about that. But he had a lot more than that to say. He went on to talk about the fact, especially this was the gaggle before, right? Before they go out and talk to the car wash, the big room, which is where all the beat writers and newspaper writers and bloggers and people like that sit. That's in the big room. And then there's the electronic media where all the local medias, the news stations, stuff like that, they want to come in there and have sound bites to cut up for the broadcast. Before he went and did all that, or went up to the digital drive, which is the radio stations that have come into town and or blogs or podcasts, they want to come in there and have a conversation with these guys. Before he did any of that, he sat down with the local media here and had a conversation about a lot of things. And this is where he told Jed and others, we are going to get back to who we are. We're not messing around with any of this muddled mess that we were last year. Now, that's the intention. Last year wound up being a muddled mess in large part because of injuries. But ask yourself, do we really think Georgia's going to have that kind of luck again in the injury department? Because I told you in 21 and 22, when it was happening in real time, looking back at it, I was telling anybody that would listen, Georgia's getting bounces. They're getting breaks. Yes, they're incredibly talented. But when balls are bouncing off of calves for interceptions or off of helmets for interceptions, things like that are happening over and over and over. There's a certain amount of, good fortune in that. And that's okay. That's part of the game. But then the last couple of years, it hadn't gone that way at all. I mean, Georgia was a beneficiary of the fact that Alabama suffered a couple of different wide receiver injuries along the way in the matchups over the past couple of years. Were those injuries the reason? Absolutely. That Georgia won in 21 and defeated Alabama for the national championship? No, it's not absolutely the reason, but it's a factor. In spades, that sort of injury bug has come back to Georgia. Just think about 2023. 6 or 7 quarters is all that Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey played together in the 23 season. That is stunning. Yet they still went undefeated in the regular season, right? They still set another record in a bowl victory. They still sent all those dudes off to the NFL. Bowers, McConkey, they're like all pro candidates on the top 100 players in the NFL right now, as voted by their peers. Superstar talents. But the bug, it bit them pretty good in 23. And then in 24, it wasn't the superstars necessarily that got hurt, but it was people getting dinged up along the way. If you want to make an argument that Tate Ratledge is a superstar, he missed significant time with an injury. If you want to make the argument that Green is a budding superstar, he missed significant time with an injury. And it goes on and on and on. Rod Robinson missed essentially the whole season. Branson Robinson missed essentially the whole season. It can't be that way again. It seems like the pendulum has to swing. So if it comes back to the middle and Georgia's not being beaten down by these injuries, then yeah, Kirby's sitting there going, this is who we're going to be. We are going to run the football. We are not going to be a muddled mess anymore. We're going to have a plan and we're going to execute. That word is a key word. Execute, though. The thing that we saw from Georgia's squad in 24 that I am not used to seeing, and I'm not sure why exactly, was a lack of discipline on the field and off. And I hate to say that, but if you think about what happened in the offseason, in the run up to it, right, with the traffic violations, with Ra Thomas being kicked off the team, with essentially Colby Young being suspended for the entire year. Off the field, there were things that were getting in the way. That's a lack of discipline. That's a lack of locker room accountability. And then when we got into the season, at the most crucial time, 2 errors in the Sugar Bowl. Georgia trying to come back, trying to mount an offensive against Notre Dame. Late in the game, 4th and 2, Dylan Fairchild jumps off sides. That's a mental error, a discipline error. Moments later, Georgia's trying to stop Notre Dame on a 4th down. Key, they have to have the football back. Just like in the Georgia Tech game, they have to have the ball back. Smile Munden jumps off sides. 1st down, Notre Dame. Game over. That's a mental error. That is an execution error. It is a discipline problem coming from people who are leaders on your team. So maybe in a nutshell, that is exactly part of what the problem was last year in Athens. Yes, there were injuries. Yes, they weren't as talented overall as they had been in prior years. But those things don't help. And it's a sign of a bigger problem. So when Kirby steps to the podium among the local media here and he's talking about we're going to be who we're going to be, it's all of those things he's talking about. We are going to be disciplined. We are going to get back to doing what it is Georgia does. And then when he spoke to the larger media, and he's out there in the car wash, that's where he started delivering his messages. And essentially, he delivered the same message that he's been delivering since spring practice, the same message that I've been talking about since spring practice, or even before. They now have added it as a new pillar of their DNA traits. FPE, fire, passion, energy. What does it look like? If you ask me, passion means for the game. If you're passionate about something, that means you want to do it the very best you can do it. I am not saying that Smile Munden or Dylan Fairchild didn't care about Georgia, but I am saying that when the going got tough, they faltered and failed. Could that be explained as the lack of passion? I don't know. That might be a step too far. But one thing's for sure is that Oscar Delp has gone on video for the world to see and said, you can tell those who don't have it. Why would he say that? Clearly, he has seen those who didn't have it. And he was calling it out. That's what he was doing. That's what Kirby's talking about. That's why that's the message for college football as a whole. Don't come to Georgia if you don't love it. You go wherever you want. You chase your dream. You want the bag now? Go get it. Don't come to Georgia if you don't want to play and care about every snap of every practice of every game with the same passion. One of the phrases that Kirby used today was, I don't care really what your 40 time is. I care what your time is on your 40th 40. When you've run it 39 prior times and I tell you to line up and run it again, that's the one I care about. Do you have that grit like Gunnar Stockton has? Do you have that care, that want to, like Brock Bowers has, where he refused to lose running 110s in the summer Georgia heat? Even when his position players in the room with him were not, they were cheating. They were rolling in and saying, I'm going to take this one against Brock. You take this one against Brock. And then I'll take the next one, so they could have energy, so they could maybe keep up with him. And Brock wouldn't have it. He never lost. Are you going to do it when it's hard? That's what Kirby's talking about. That's what he told everybody at SEC Media's today. That's what he meant. Fire, passion, and energy. FPE. Don't come to Georgia if you don't love it. Be like Gunnar, the guy at the front of the line. I told you Kirby was going to deliver a message. To my ears, it was crystal clear. Think about the team he's talking to. He's talking to a team, and he told us this today too. I mentioned we learned stuff. Here's what we learned. I have sat in this chair for months and said, Georgia's young. Almost half the team, these are my words, almost half the team is in their first or second year at the University of Georgia. That's transfers, that's freshmen, right? Mid-year enrollees, that sort of stuff. I had it wrong. Kirby Smart told us today, it's not almost 50%. 54% of Georgia's current roster is in year 1 or 2 at the University of Georgia. That means they just went through their first spring practice. That means they're about to go through their first or maybe second fall camp at the University of Georgia. Bloody Tuesday, that's a new thing to them. The way they practice hard every day, the way they get after it, the way Kirby's on that mic, all of that's new to them. So they are very, very impressionable. Even guys like Gunner, who thankfully from the sound of it, Kirby doesn't have to worry about. But even guys like Gunner or like Dalen Everett, who've been working while they waited, they are going to hear the same message, which is fire, passion, and energy. You better care if you're going to play at Georgia. This team is young and impressionable, and they are looking for someone to lead them. Who is it going to be? Are they going to listen to Dalen? Are they going to listen to C.J. Allen? Are they going to listen to Gunner Stockton? Because the coaches can't do it. The coaches can't do it. It's human nature. When things get hard, the last thing you want to hear is somebody who's not out there running telling you to run faster. Right? We have all been there in some way in our lives. You don't want to hear it. But if that other coach steps aside and a player steps in and he says, move your tail, it's not good enough, we're doing it again, that kind of accountability wins you a championship. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. It can't be Kirby. He delivered his message sitting on the SEC Network stage today with the panel. He's like, if you don't want to come to Georgia, or don't come to Georgia if you don't love it, he told everybody in attendance, he told everybody watching on TV, he told every recruit across the country, you should have no mistake what it's going to be like when you get here. We care about all of it. Lane Kiffin yesterday was asked, what about Kirby Smart? And he also was asked about Steve Sarkisian. But Lane Kiffin said he is the epitome of a CEO. He runs his program that way. Nobody has more attention to detail than Kirby Smart. He understands everything that's happening inside his program, top to bottom. I think the word he used was organization. Top to bottom, he knows everything that's happening. When that dude who knows everything that's happening inside his building, when that dude calls you out about your passion, about your fire, passion, and energy, you're going to listen because there's nowhere to run. It's like Big Brother. He knows. And Kirby said it today from the podium. When they don't meet the standard, what he has seen so far is they are being checked and held accountable by their teammates. The message is getting through. Will that make the difference? I said the reason Georgia beat Texas last year because they were tougher. Physically, they were tougher. Mentally, they were tougher. I heard Cole Kubelik say this today, and I'm going to straight up steal it because it makes the most sense of anything I've heard. Everyone, even though they both lost the same kind of stuff from last year to this year in terms of production and player movement and that sort of thing, everybody points to Texas right now and says Texas is the favorite to win the league. They're the favorite to win the national championship in some books. They had the Heisman favorite preseason on their team. Texas is the prettiest house on the street. Okay. But, does the roof leak? How's the foundation? Does it just look good from the curb? Would you actually want to invest in it and buy it? I don't know. Texas has to show us. Or would you rather have a house that is a beautiful house, a really, really expensive house, looks great from the curb, maybe not as shiny as the one down the street, but looks great. But then when you get inside, it only gets better, right? It has character. It has feel. It's like putting on a pair of comfy slippers. Maybe that's the house you choose to buy. In Kubelik's metaphor, that's what it was. He would rather have the comfy slippers in Georgia. He wasn't sold on Texas and the prettiest house out there. It's preseason. How do we know? We don't know anything. But we can read the tea leaves. I know that what I'm hearing from Kirby Smart is a message that keeps me fired up about it. It lets me know that he is absolutely comfortable with Gunnar Stockton as his quarterback moving into this season. He is absolutely comfortable with C.J. Allen being the heartbeat of that defense. And he is absolutely comfortable with Dalen Everett leading what is going to be a young and relatively inexperienced secondary for Georgia. He sleeps very well at night. He says what football has come down to, and again, this is what I'm saying. This is what I've been beating the bush about for the last few weeks. Kirby is different because the philosophy is different. The superstructure of what Georgia is different. Not only does he run his organization the way he should, right? Top to bottom, he knows what's going on. Everyone is held accountable immediately. There is no room for messing around. Not only does he do it that way, he has an understanding that you can't, and I talked about this with Jed, you cannot speed up the development of a young player. A 17 or 18-year-old is still a 17 or 18-year-old, both physically and mentally. In years past, you had 2 to 3 years. Maybe you could get this kid in the weight room, get him to the training table, beef him up a little bit, teach him what he needs to know. And by year 3, now you've got a dependable starter for your top line, right? A key player in your first 22. Those days don't exist. And the secret here, the dirty little secret for some programs out there, is that it's not just Georgia who has this problem. Everyone across the country has the same problem. Because of the portal, players are all over the place. Half the time, you don't even know who's on your team until we get to the middle of July. Not fully. So everybody's dealing with it. And then Kirby is just putting it right out there in front of everybody. Look, I can't speed them up in terms of how fast they grow. I can't speed them up in, how fast they learn the system. I can't do it. Time is what time is. The key is for us to get out here and do it with what we have. Who does the best with what they have? Can I make my 22 better than your 22? Kirby Smart, as Chris Marler said on this show last night, is the best coach in college football. We have seen what he can do when given the resources, the plan. He knows what it looks like. You got to let him go build it. If you're going to play in Athens, you have to sign off on the process. If you do that, at the end of the day, Georgia's going to win a lot. That's great. And oh, by the way, you're going to have a career at the next level getting paid. Not this, money up front that is going to be gone because that's what young people do for the most part. They spend it like water. You're going to get that real money. Not just the NFL contract either. I mean, being a first round pick is great. But when you walk away from Georgia, what you're going to get is that second contract, because we understand here at Georgia, and they teach these young players how to be a pro, how to practice and work on your craft every day, how to take that with you once you get into the league and show how valuable you are. And you earn that second contract, and then you get your payday. That is the vision. The new world of NIL, the new world of transfer portal, it is what it is. People will make their choices. It's fine. Go be great. I hope you do. Just don't expect me to care. If you're wearing the red and black and the silver breeches, yeah, I'm going to follow what you're doing. I'm going to support you in any way I can. But if you choose to go somewhere else, I'm not going to wish you harm. I'm going to say, fare thee well. That's what Kirby's saying. Okay, don't come to Georgia. At least you understand what it is you're getting into when you're making an informed choice. That's fantastic. I'm happy for everybody involved in that situation. You didn't want to do what it took to be here. You prioritized the early reward over the long-term reward, which is human nature. I'm okay with that if I'm Kirby Smart. I'm okay with it. Because I know that because of the way I built my program and what I'm going to do on the recruiting trail moving forward, I'll just go find the next one. And it's not going to matter that he's young because everybody's young. I'm trusting myself, my coaching staff, my system, my program to get my 22 ready better, faster than you can get your 22 ready. So far, Kirby Smart's right. So far, that's exactly how it's worked out for Kirby Smart in this new world. And as they put guardrails on this system, as we get to the point where there are, you can't just make crazy promises about money in NIL. Once they put a nail on when that transfer portal window is, whether or not they realize it, for the most part, I think that Kirby Smart is just sitting back and just sort of rubbing his hands like that. He's like, yes. Because all he's ever said is give me the rules and let me go win. I trust, I believe that we'll get it done. The track record proves that he's right. People who do this for a living, like Chris Marley, like myself, we see it. Yes, I am biased on this channel. I put my Georgia hat on when I sit in this chair. But as a professional, I can tell you, the way they do it is not the same as the way everybody else does it. And their way right now is the best way. The best coach in the land, the top program in the land, the team that took a wrecking ball to the prettiest house on the block twice last year to prove it. This year's a different year. It all may be different. Everything may be turned upside down. But that's why we watch. That's why they play the games. They have to go prove it. Fire, passion, and energy. FPE. May be coming to a store near you sometime soon. I'm excited about Georgia football moving into 2025. I am fully aware, and if you are at this channel often, you understand just as well as I do why. It is going to have its questions. There are things to be chased down and answered out there. But I do believe and trust that Kirby Smart's going to get his 22 better quicker than the other guy's 22. The schedule is what it is. It's that way for everybody every year. It's going to be a challenge. But Georgia has shown that they are not a one-year wonder. I mean, Lane Kiffin was in Atlanta yesterday for SEC Media Days, and the big question about his team coming into 2025 is, did they spend everything last year? Did they sort of go all in last year and then fail to accomplish the big goal? They didn't get to Atlanta. They didn't make the playoff. Was it a failure? Can they come back and do it again? After talking to the people who handle, Ole Miss media, they seem to think that this team is going to be very good for Lane Kiffin in 2025. But there was a question there. Can they? The way they build their team is different. The way they run their program is different. And if you don't believe me, ask the man himself who is at the head of the program, who said the way Kirby Smart runs his program is different than the way we run ours. And there's nothing wrong with it being different. Ole Miss is doing what they have to do. But Kiffin had no issue acknowledging what was happening in Athens and who the man was that was running the show and what that means. Georgia was not built as a one-hit wonder. They were built to sustain. So the fact that there are going to be, hopefully, a smoother, more guardrailed road ahead of us moving forward in college football, as a Georgia fan, you have to like that. You have to like where we're headed, and you have to like the fact that Kirby Smart is the man at the top of the hill. There's a lot to discuss, but essentially, it's like I said when I was talking to Jed off the top. When Kirby and the Dogs sat down behind the microphones today in Atlanta, the thing that they wanted to do was just repeat what they had been saying, to double down and drive home the point. Win or lose, we are who we are. This program is about X, Y, and Z. This year, that was fire, passion, and energy. I like players, I like leaders who lead from the front of the line. That's what Kirby Smart said. And he was not only talking about his prospective starting quarterback. He was talking about himself. He was talking about C.J. Allen. He was talking about Dalen Everett. That's what this team has to have because they are young. They will be challenged. There will be moments when they look young. And if you're on the social media, you're going to see the Georgia people freak out. There's a contingent of the fan base that are going to lose their ever-loving mind. The first time Gunnar Stockton throws an interception, they're going to call for Puglisi, right? The first time Dalen Everett or whoever's the opposite of him on the cornerback gets beat deep, right? They're going to call for that player to be benched. That contingent exists in every fan base. But the people who are here tonight, the people who enjoy this kind of conversation, y'all understand that that is not what the game is. You understand that these guys are going to have to learn on the fly in a lot of cases because that is the new world of college football. There's nothing I can do certainly to change it, and Kirby can't change it. And if there was anybody who could, it would be somebody like him. Can't. It is the world that we all live in right now in terms of college football. But I don't think it's going to change anytime soon in any drastic way. I just hope it gets a little bit better. Just a little bit. Those guardrails will come into place. NIL will tone down. The transfer portal will be locked in. And then we can all get back to just letting Kirby take his 2 or 22, go line them up in a parking lot somewhere, and take on the other dude's 22. And then we can have a legitimate conversation about who's better. So, Georgia in Athens took the road show to Atlanta and took over SEC Media Days today. Today was the day that was the big show. Georgia's there. Texas is there. Tennessee was there. And it's not often that you don't talk a lot about Tennessee. But today was one of those days. They were a little overshadowed. I think for the most part, people think Tennessee's going to slide back just a little bit. We shall see. And then Auburn was there too. We discussed Auburn earlier in the show. Nationally speaking, Auburn is not that big of a story right now. We'll see how they play. They could very quickly become a story in the SEC and nationally. But that's something we're going to have to watch and see. But the other team that was in Atlanta today, the other team that helped make this be what is probably the heaviest, most exciting day of the entire 4 days is Texas. Steve Sarkisian brought his Texas Longhorns into Atlanta as the team that expects to win the conference this year. They expect to take the next step in the college football playoff, and they expect to continue to grow this program. Never mind, and I'm not saying anything about Sark here. He was very straightforward. He understands that they didn't get that done last year, and he's very aware of why. It's because of Kirby Smart and his Georgia Bulldogs. But this is the year, regardless of everything they lost, he acknowledged that too. He's like, but we're replacing all of that, and we still feel like our roster is good enough that we're going to show up, show out, and be there at the end. So it's one of those things where, like I said about Hugh Freeze, he showed up confident the way Auburn fans want him to show up. He showed up supporting his young quarterback who needs all the support he can get, right? Keep him jazzed up and ready to go. Sark showed up just like that, and it's no surprise that he would. He has a very, very good team. He is at the top of a very, very good program. So it was exciting to hear him step in today and start to talk about things, because I wasn't exactly sure how this thing was going to shake out. I mean, everybody who came with him essentially is an All-American or a preseason All-American going into 2025, and everybody wanted to talk to Sark, just like they wanted to talk to Kirby. You can see his local media gaggle here early in the day, and he was asked all kinds of questions, but I was impressed with Texas. I was a little on the back foot, though, because I wasn't sure exactly where he was coming from at one point. And I will explain. Because they lost as much as Georgia did in terms of returning production. They lost a lot off the offensive line. They lost a lot at wide receiver. They're also getting back, though, the returning leading rusher in the SEC. They are getting back a running back that was injured last year, who was maybe better than the guy who led the league in rushing last year, his teammate there in Texas. They have the wonderkind at quarterback, who everybody can't wait to watch. There's no reason to think that Texas is going anywhere. They're going to be every bit as good as Georgia or better. So I wasn't really sure what Sark was talking about when he started talking about the fact that they had been building for this year. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't understand. He says, I think we have a very hungry football team. One that is talented. No joke. I really like our roster. No kidding. This is probably the deepest and most talented defense that we've had. I thought that was interesting. Even though they lost as much as Georgia did, he is saying, or at least it sounded to me like in a roundabout way, that he was saying they were building for this year. He didn't say that directly. This is me reading into it a little bit. But he's saying we have been building, knowing we were coming into the SEC, knowing that we had to have a certain body type in this league, and that it doesn't matter that we're in the SEC. There's only one standard at Texas, and that is that we compete for championships. Now, I'm not throwing rocks at Texas. He's not wrong. That's the way Texas views themselves, and that's the way they should. But the facts are it is a different league. They came in and represented themselves very well in the SEC last year, no doubt. But at the end of the day, the things I talked about earlier, in my opinion, wound up being the difference between them actually winning a national, not a national title, an SEC championship, and not winning it. They did just fine in the college football playoff. They made it in, they advanced. They didn't get it done in the end. That's all right. A tournament like that is what it is. But to hear him talk about his team the way he did today, I don't know. He was confident in his squad as well, but it did sound like somehow he was saying, I expect us to be better. The national media certainly expects them to be better. They are the odds-on favorite to win the conference. When the SEC media collected in Atlanta votes this week, they will probably put Texas at the top of who they think is going to win the thing here inside the conference. I don't think that's going to be a stretch. I think they are closest to 50% chance to win it based on the straw polls that I've seen out there. And Georgia's probably 10 percentage points behind them, but they're checking in at the second best chance to win it. The Alabama people don't want to hear any of that. They think they've got a top 3 defense over there at Tuscaloosa, and that's going to be the difference in what happens with the Crimson Tide. The LSU people don't want to hear that. Brian Kelly stood at the podium yesterday and said, well, I think we should be in the playoff, and if we're not, then we have messed it up. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially that's what he's saying. Everybody in Baton Rouge is on the NUS bus, and they're like, yeah, this is going to happen if Garrett Nussmeier leads us to the promised land. They're talking about this LSU squad being as good as the 2019 LSU squad. I didn't have that on my bingo card. But when you look at Texas the way you should, as somebody who takes the emotion out of it, and I know that's hard to do as a college football fan, but when I say as you should, I'm talking about people like me, right? The ones who do this for a living. We are objective, because that's what being a professional is. I can take my Georgia hat off and look at the SEC objectively and say, Texas has a roster as good as anybody in the country. They should be at the top of this heap in the discussion. Alabama should be in this discussion. LSU should be there. Georgia should be there. Absolutely. Of course, Texas should be there. But Texas, if you think Georgia has questions, then you have to reconcile that Texas does as well. If not, then maybe you do have orange blood or you're wearing orange colored glasses. That's how it is. If you're going to address Georgia and say you've got all these issues, you have to say the same about Arch and Texas, because yes, Arch is the reason. We all know this. But if we're just being fair, and Arch said this today to his credit, he's like, I have played, but I haven't been a starter like that. I haven't gone through the league like that. I have a lot to prove. Good on you, young man. Good on you, because you are exactly right. Arch is the reason. The wonderkind. And I'm not here. This is not a rant about whether or not he is who he says he is. That is not what this is. We will find out. We don't know what Arch is. We know he got the deer in headlights look when he stepped on the field against Georgia in Austin last year. We know that. That was captured for eternity. Look it up. It's a meme if you haven't seen it. But not only on the meme, you could see it in the game. Both he and Quinn Ewers seeing ghosts. He knows it, though. He's not out here saying, I'm going to come out here and set the world on fire. He's saying, I've got to go prove it. Okay, awesome. I mean, I like the kid. I listened to him today. He's very affable. Great personality. He knows how to talk to the media. There's no reason, if you are a Texas fan, to not look at Arch and go, this is the guy, we're going to go get this thing done. But the truth is, he still has to go do it. And at least he knows that, and he's willing to admit it. I mean, I'm giving him absolute credit for that. But the rest of the collected media across the national scale specifically looks at it and goes, oh, Manning, I know that name. And they're Texas, and they're spending a bunch of money, so they have to have a good roster. It's their turn. They didn't win it last year, but that was a fluke, and Texas is going to win the thing. I know that sounds like I'm mocking the national media, and in a way I absolutely am, but I don't mean to do it in a mocking tone. I just mean to say that people who don't follow it day by day, who are not beat writers for these teams, they just look at the surface level and literally no deeper than a layer of dust on a countertop, right? That's how they make these assessments for these national media programs often. Again, I'm not talking about the shows that are college football focused or whatever. I'm just talking about, generally speaking, the media, that's how they refer to it. So it's not Arch's fault that people are expecting him to come out here and dominate the thing. It's not his fault that they are saying he is the next Peyton or whatever it is they're saying. Georgia wanted him. Absolutely they did. Alabama wanted him. Absolutely they did. He chose to go to Texas. He said today mostly because of Austin. He's like, I love the city. And then he's like, then there's the school. And oh, by the way, there's the football thing. Okay. Great. There you go. I don't have a problem with him going to Texas or doing whatever. I'm saying in every way that Steve Sarkisian made me wonder what it was he was saying, how maybe they were building for this year when they lost so much last year. That part didn't mesh with me. As confused as that made me, when I heard Arch speak, I was like, oh no, this guy gets it. I see why the Texas people are excited about him. I see that, and I'm okay with that. All I've ever said is people who are not really looking at Texas, who is also going to have a very good defense. I mean, again, Stark just told you, This is probably the deepest and most talented defense we've had. If he's right, then Texas should absolutely be considered an SEC favorite and a national championship favorite, just like Alabama. And then there is the camp who looks at the University of Georgia like Chris Marler, who we had on last night, who says, don't even talk to me about what Georgia is right now. We just don't know who they are. They're going to be great. His words, paraphrasing. I know it. I don't doubt Kirby Smart. He's not wrong either. But I think that it's completely fair for Texas people to say the same thing. Texas has players. We just don't know them all. They lost a lot of offensive linemen. They're going to plug in new dudes. They're going to be All-Americans also, right? That's how it works at this top level. That's how it works. Now, the only teams we've seen Arch play against are directional schools, essentially. And he did what you're supposed to do. He went out and handled his business. But then when he saw the monster that Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann cooked up when they rolled into Athens or Austin, he wasn't seeing things so clearly. He wasn't running for 40-yard touchdowns. He was getting walked down by superior athletes on the defensive side of the ball for Georgia. He was getting blitzed, harassed, hurried, and sacked. So it didn't matter what his wide receivers were doing. And when Quinn was in the game, he was missing corner blitzes and getting hammered. He was being intercepted by Dalen Everett 4 times last season. People talked about Peyton Woodring and Trevor Etienne scoring all of the points against Texas last year for Georgia. That's a pretty cool stat. It's a weird stat, pretty cool though. And one might be tempted to say those dudes were monsters against Texas, right? They owned Texas. They just, whatever it was, they dominated them. There's some truth to that. If you want to be that hyperbolic, you can say that about those players. But if you're going to do that, you better say that about Dalen Everett. He has destroyed Texas. A sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 4 interceptions, and double-digit tackles in 2 games against Texas last year. He can't wait to play the Longhorns. He cannot wait. It's just me poking a little fun. I'm just saying, I like Sarkisian. I think he's a great coach. Texas is a fantastic program with an outstanding roster. They have a tremendous young quarterback who I think is going to be good. Is he going to be what everybody says and expects him to be because of his last name? No idea. I have no idea. It's not fair to him, honestly, what people are asking him to be. And if Texas fails to win the SEC, or even more, fails to make it to Atlanta, I don't know how that's going to go over. I mean, you don't expect that to happen. I guarantee you the collected media in Atlanta, they don't expect that to happen. They expect Texas to be there. There are 4 teams that people seem to want to talk about. 5, maybe. That would be Texas, Georgia, Alabama, the 3 at the very, very top. Then they want to throw in LSU because they're talented. And Brian Kelly seems to believe that they are going to put some points up on the board this year. They're going to be hard to stop. And the defense is going to be better. So they think they've got a shot. The 5th team would be Texas A&M. Now, the thing about Texas A&M, and we'll get to them later this week at SEC Media Days, is that they seem to be doing everything right. They have a great young quarterback. They seem to be recruiting well. They seem to be coaching well. Yet they just couldn't get it done at a high enough clip last year to make it matter. Texas handled them without much of an issue, right? But people seem to think that Texas A&M is poised to make that move this year. So the projected order of finish, I have not made my order of finish yet the way we do at media days. I just think that the media is going to do something like this. I think they're going to say Texas 1. I think they're going to say Georgia 2, Alabama 3, and then probably put LSU 4, and then have A&M 5. That's what I think of those top 5. I think that's what they're going to vote to do. Does that mean they're going to be right? No, they're hardly ever right. And if you're a Texas fan, you have to look at that and say, oopsie, right? That just means that if you believe in kismet fate and all those bad voodoo signs, that's not a good sign for you and your program. I don't think it matters at all. But if you buy into that sort of thing, just know that they may get the kiss of death a little bit later. So that's Texas. They are ready to go. I don't know if they've been building for this year or not, especially with a new quarterback coming in there. I know he's Arch Manning, but he's still new, and he still has to go do it at Florida, at Georgia, right? He still has to go on the road and make this thing happen. He still has to go take snaps in the Red River rivalry. He still has to go do it. And he's just a football player. He's not some, something special beyond a football player. But I'm not rooting against him. I'm pulling for him as a young man. He represented himself well in Atlanta. I think he did a wonderful job. I think Sarkisian did the right thing by showing up and talking about his team in a positive way, embracing the expectations that are there for his team. And I think that, as he put it, the standard at Texas is what it is. Doesn't matter the league, doesn't matter the losses. You have to show up and you have to win championships. And if you don't, it doesn't count. If that's the standard, then Texas is, they've since 2005, 20 years since something happened that they could really hang their hat on. Just making the playoff doesn't feel like it's good enough for Texas. Just making Atlanta doesn't feel like it's good enough for Texas. So we'll see how it shakes out for them. But I appreciated the way they represented themselves when they got to Atlanta. And again, I'm not rooting against Arch. I just want everybody to give the kid a chance to breathe. Let him show up. Let him show us what he's all about. And as long as he's not playing my dogs, I wish him well. And when he plays Georgia, I hope he trips over his own shoelaces and fumbles the ball every opportunity he has. What are you going to do? That is just the fan in me. There's not a whole lot more I can say about it. That is a look at day 2 at SEC Media Days. We talked about Auburn. We talked about the Dogs in Tennessee, and we finished the show with Texas. The biggest day, arguably, of the week has come and gone. There's so much content around it. Follow the channel, follow the posts here on the wall, follow me on social media at HBTFDAWGSCAST. We're everywhere. We have so much content coming at you from so many different directions. It is that proverbial fire hose I've been talking about for the last couple of days. And we're not turning the spigot off. We're going to crank it up and do it again tomorrow. I hope you'll come back here and see me again tomorrow as we continue to blow out the budget for coverage here on the channel. I've had a good time tonight. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I hope that you come back tomorrow so we can do it all over again. Until next time, y'all take care of yourselves, your friends, your family. Take care of each other. And as always, go Dogs!